So now we're going to go ahead and work on problem 2-109. It says, Peyton has come to your team for help. Use the lesson 2.3.1 alpha resource page with a set of axes, such as the one at right, so these guys over here, which you also have in your notebook, to complete the following problems. Work with your team to decide on a scale for each axis that will make Peyton's data from problem 2-106 easy to see. Then on your own paper, you're going to draw axes, mark your scales, and plot Peyton's data points. So again, we're talking about this on your resource page. So a couple of things that I'm going to start with is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and darken both my X and my Y axis to make it sure that it's a little easier to be seen on here. So I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to go ahead and just mark this. Again, I'm just doing this to make it so that it's easier to see where we're at, what we're doing. You don't necessarily have to do it unless it's helpful for you. You're welcome to do that as well. So there we are. So again, I've got my, looks like part of my x-axis wasn't real sharp there. So I'm going to label my x-axis, and again, this is my x-axis because it's short. And then I have my y-axis right here, and I think of it because I have this long part right here, and it has a long tail. So that's my y-axis. I'm also going to label it like we had right here. So for this guy right here, we have length in inches. That's going to stay the same. And then also what's going to stay the same is that this is the wingspan of the bats, also measured in inches. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this and write that there. It's important to label what we are measuring so that we understand what's going on here. We want to know what we're counting. That's important. The numbers don't really mean anything unless we know what we're actually counting. So let me see if I can get this guy to focus a little better. Doesn't seem to like this as much as I think, or maybe it's my angle. That could be it too. So as we were looking, I'm going to go back to our textbook real quick. And up here in this chart, so this is the data that we're going to graph. So we've been looking at the length of these 5 types of bats. These lengths right here in inches. Also their wingspan in inches. So their body length is what's our x-axis. The wingspan is our y-axis. So we need to have an appropriate scale that we can see this easier. And so remember, our minimum is 3 inches. The maximum is 5 inches. So we need to decide on our x-axis right here, what would be an appropriate length, or what would be really good to be able to see that. So we know from problem 2-106 that 1 inch, it made it too squished, or 107, it made it just too squished. So we needed to spread that data out, which means we need to have something that's in between 0 and 1 for this interval right here, this scale. So some classes chose to make where each one of these was worth a 1/2 inch based on their x-axis looking at this data. Other classes chose to make it 1/4 inch. And so what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to do the latter. I'm going to do 1/4 inch. Either way is fine, but I think it's clearer to see what happens with the 1/4 inch. We need to make sure that all of our numbers fit though. Remember, our minimum was 3, our maximum is 5. We need to make sure that 5 inches fits on here. So I have my 0 is right here. This would be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1 whole. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 2. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 3. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 5. I'm going to go ahead and mark those as well, just so that we can see them a little more clearly. So again, this is the body length in inches. So I can absolutely fit my maximum, which was the 5 right here. So that's good. Now we need to be able, this one here, I'm going to say that our scale cannot be the same. We need to make it so, remember our maximum of this guy right here is 14 and the minimum is 10. And when we look at this, there's only 20 spaces available. So changing this one to a quarter or even a half would mean that we would have a data point somewhere up here, and we don't want that. So I'm going to, for our sake, we're going to keep it this interval as 1 inch, just so that it all fits. So I'm not going to mark each one because then it just becomes a really big jumbled mess. So we have 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inches, 5 inches. That makes 10. $15 and $20. And so the fact that it's at 20 inches up here means that my biggest one, which is 14, my largest number, will absolutely fit on this graph. So this was a big idea for this problem, was figuring out what this scale would be, especially on this x-axis, to make it so it was more spread out so that we could see whether or not there was a pattern between the bat's body length and the wingspan. And so this was the big idea. But I discovered today as I was teaching this that a lot of students were struggling with actually putting down their ordered pairs as well. 6th grade normally would have a lot of time spent making different types of graph, including putting ordered pairs on a coordinate system like this. And so normally I don't have to spend as much time on it, but it looks like we do need to spend some time on it. So I want to make sure that you're good there. I'm going to do that in another video though, because I'm worried about the length of this one, but this is how you get that graph set up. And this is the part that would meet that learning target of setting up an appropriate scale for our graph, for the data.